This is Third Paradigm, and I'm Teresa Caraggio. My topic today is called "And the Flesh Was Made Word," or Drawing on Both Sides of the Brain. This was inspired by a long comment thread that I had with Guy Duperrault on his post, "Just This Is It, What Is This?" And our conversation was about the nature of reality and went into some very deep territory, which he's captured in a post on his own that I'll link to in the Substack. But I've been talking about a lot of very dark material lately, and I think that we always have to alternate the reality in the world and questioning the reality of the world. Those are 2 feet of the same body, and if you don't keep moving both of them, you end up going in circles. And so this time I want to explore, and one of the things that is a synchronicity, which I know Guy is very interested in, Guy started his synopsis of our conversation with a quote from Krishnamurti, where he wanted to dissolve the Theosophical Society that he had been a big part of, and said that there is no path, and that all of these religious groups that were talking about what was going to happen and what was reality, that they should all be dissolved because there was no path. Now, I also have been reading Rudolf Steiner, and very curiously, Pasheen Stonebrook sent me a link on her recent article on Steiner that said, "Oh, I'm sure you've seen this." And it was a clip of Steiner talking about vaccines back in 1917 and talking about how there would be ones that would reduce the amount of access we have to spirit and then would eliminate the soul. And he ended his talk saying, "We need serious, profound ideas to look ahead to the future. Theosophy is not a game, not just a theory. It is a task that must be faced for the sake of human evolution." I think that that's what we need to be doing. That right now there is nothing more important that we can be talking about than the nature of reality and what is our true relationship to each other and what is real and what isn't real. This is something that I want to open up today and bring in logic and reason and this side of the brain that is spirit, and look at how there's a relationship between those two. So let's delve into this. The lecture series that Rudolf Steiner quote is from is called "The Fall of the Spirits of Darkness," and I think that's very significant. In another synchronicity, I was reading Sasha Latypova on mind control and word and vectors. In that, she talks about the trivium, and that was the Greek prerequisite for learning how to think clearly, and it involved learning logic and rhetoric and grammar, which was how words fit together and what is the basis of them. That's something we don't have anymore. And I think that we need to be being much more disciplined in our ways of thinking and our ways of conversing with each other. That we need to be relentless in challenging ideas, but scrupulous in not attacking people. And that's something that we don't have a forum for, that ideally I think religion should be a forum for asking the big questions. But instead, it's a place where people give you the answers, and you don't have anything to say about that. I think the Theosophical Society has some of that too. I don't agree with everything that Steiner came to, but I really love his model of looking at the reality in the world and questioning the nature of the reality of the world. That's what I think we need to be doing. Guy and I have tremendous respect and affection for each other. One of the many things I love about Guy is that his articles include a playlist. So there's a soundtrack that you can listen to while you're reading, and I've gotten some of my favorite songs from it. So that's what makes this disagreement between Guy and I so interesting. We both have the capacity to stay with the trouble and to keep on getting deeper. And I see this as something where neither one of us can win unless we both win. That we need to come to a place of either saying, okay, this is as far as we can go together, or saying, maybe there's a little bit further. I think that when people talk about speaking truth to power, that's vapid virtue signaling. The thing that's really hard is speaking truth to your friends, as we all know from this COVID moment. So I want to continue with this conversation and look at where it is that we have agreed and where we've come to different places. Guy begins his post with a quote from the Gospel of John in which he uses logos, but I'm going to use word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. I commented on Guy's post. So, play with me here. What if our collective identity in reality is the Logos, the giver of shape, form, modulation? God is the breath, the spirit. Nothing can be formed from the throat alone, the tongue, the lips. It all starts with the breath. God gives essence, but we give shape to the essence. Nothing can be made but what is made with God. In this world of dream delusion, we're just mouthing the words. But there is no capital W word because there's no breath spirit to animate it. No wind blows through our reed. Somewhere in our memory is the song of breath that we gave voice to. But we are dismembered until we remember ourself, and that's with a capital S. Guy enthusiastically took up my invitation to play, and even went as far as drawing a diagram of what he defined as the collective self, which is kind of like the self in a crowd, the mob, which is completely unaware, and then the individuated self, which is completely aware. And I replied that I wasn't really looking at either of those, because both of those depend on us being the flesh-encapsulated mind, as someone has put it, that we are separate bodies with separate minds that are each enclosed in them. What I'm looking at is a right-hand turn off the page into a different dimension, a third paradigm in which our true self is as one, that we're having a dream in which we're figures in different bodies, but that dream isn't real, and that God cannot come into our dream, because if God were to come into our dream and try to fix it, then God would be making that dream real. All that God can do is say our name, is be that breath, is be the spirit that gives shape to helping us remember who we really are. And I think that's where the importance of this question is. That the most important question, I think, in religion is, what's my true relationship to you? Are we separate? Are we competitive? Is it survival of the fittest? Is it thriving of the chosen by God? What is our true nature? Because if our true nature is that we're one, then we're perfect. And we're only going to recognize that we're perfect if we give up our competition with each other to be better than you. And I think there's a masculine side of that is superiority, and I think there's a feminine side of that that's specialness, that, as every rom-com will show, I am the most sought after. You will sacrifice the most for me. That's the female version of what I think on the masculine side is superiority. Guy's response was to redraw the diagram so it had a vertical axis going both up and down. And the up he defined as light, as the divine mother-father dyad, and then the down was going into the darkness. He also disagreed with the course in terms of dreams, is that rather than looking at whether reality is a dream, he was looking at dreams having reality and saying that dreams are very important and here's how they impact our waking life. So that was something that I had quoted from A Course in Miracles, something that I've studied for almost 20 years. And he thought that he completely disagreed with the Course on that, and that the Course was simplistic and had a New Age truthiness to it. And he had only gotten through 200 of the 1,300 pages. So I responded to that by looking at whether anything that is 1,300 pages, that for me has been something I've been able to study daily for 20 years and get something out of. And I approach spirituality with the same discipline and rigor that I look at research and other things. You guys know that I don't flinch. I do not have anything in me that's saying, give me a feel-good answer. I can't really deal with whatever this ugly reality is. So I approach spirituality the same way. It has to have logic. It has to be something that can be argued with and that will come back and make sense. I don't think we can fool ourselves. At least I know I can't fool myself with something that doesn't have teeth to it. I could not find any religion when I first started looking 20 or more years ago that gave me answers that made sense of the way things were, that I looked at all of them. I did a whole comparative religion study, and none of them gave me any kind of answers. So that seemed to me to be something that was, to use the Greek term, guilt by association, that it was taking my ideas and rather than arguing with them, instead dismissing them by taking a body of research that had been referenced and throwing that out. And I think that that's something we shouldn't be doing. In terms of Guy's diagram, if the reality is that we are not separate selves encapsulated in separate bodies, then the person who has been meditating for 30 years on a mountain and thinks of themselves as a particularly enlightened self is exactly as deluded as the person who's watching the sports game in the arena in the middle of the crowd and couldn't care less about any kind of enlightenment. On a continuum of delusion, there are no differentiated positions. So the only where to go from that is towards truth, if in fact that is an illusion. There's no going down. You can't go any further away into illusion from being fully deluded. And so any time that we get closer to recognizing that maybe I am not separate from you, and to do that, I don't think is going after the revelation of it. It's just taking the steps of saying, I'm no better than you. If I were in your shoes, I would do exactly the same. And that's why I have been relentless about giving examples that are the furthest extremes, looking at pedosadism, looking at Hitler, and saying, as long as there is one person in the world who you think, I am better than them, I would never have done what they did, you're keeping that illusion going. You are stuck in that dream because the last thing you want to do is recognize that maybe that person is me too. But this means that the dream analysis is the most important thing there is. So when Guy looks at Jung and his importance on dream analysis, I'm all for that, because we have to figure out, how did we get into this dream? What's the dream trying to tell us? Where is the dream trying to push us to go? How can we make this turn into a good dream so that we want to wake up? What is it that we're hiding from ourselves in this dream? To conclude my discussion with Guy, I asked him if he doesn't entertain the possibility that this world is not real, but we are, and potentially God is, then which of the other two alternatives does he believe? One is God is evil, that an evil God has created evil and has created this world of evil. Or evil is God, meaning that there is no creation, that this all just came about and that might makes right, that the ability to inflict pain and torture is the strongest thing there is, and therefore is God. One of those two has to be his alternative if what we're saying is that there's no potential, that this is our dream and a place that we've excluded God from. In response to my statements that I felt Guy was not being intellectually honest in our disagreement by using terms like New Age truthiness to dismiss my ideas and redefining what it was that I meant by different terms and what the question was, he sent it to an independent third party, someone who is a woman that he knows. And so she sent back this analysis. Wow, what a fascinating conversation. I think Jordan Peterson could make much of it. But as for you being macho in your argumentation, as opposed to being toxically masculine, well, yes, perhaps, but not that that's bad, but maybe misplaced. I think men do tend towards differentiating and insisting on precise definitions, whereas women tend towards emphasizing agreement and likeness. Jordan Peterson has spoken about this quite a lot. Women are high in trait agreeableness, is how he puts it. He's also said that a feature of female tyranny would be a lack of differentiation, or something to that effect. I could look for the links for you if you want to look into that further. In sum, a man would recognize this as being deeply respectful, but a woman is unlikely to. So that is what I see on the surface level, just the differences between what men and women focus on, consider important, and how they communicate. She also was surprised that Teresa didn't really attempt to push back against your rigorous argumentation. After so many years of study, you'd have thought she'd have plenty of strong material to counter your position with. I did have to laugh at that, but I will leave it to the viewer to decide whether I am the kind of woman who emphasizes agreeableness and feelings rather than careful, precise definition of terms and logical argumentation. But I so appreciate Guy for staying with the trouble, because as the Bodhisattvas say, we can only win if we all win. And to follow up, here are 2 videos that I made responding to Russell Brand's interviews of Jordan Peterson. This is Waking the Dragon Mom and the Divine Feminine. Thank you for watching.